Let's say if I'm asking which source you often use to get information. Newspaper? Radio? TV? And the survey shows 62% of the people chose internet. You might be thinking I am going to say how important the internet is, or how quickly it has changed the world for a few years. But what if I tell you this survey is conducted on the website globalandmail.com? Our answer will be different because the people who did this survey on a website must be frequent users of internet. This sample is a biased sample, so we have to pay attention to how a survey is conducted.
That has ever been built. We've used it to launch satellites. We've used it to repair satellites in orbit and put them back into orbit. We've used it to capture satellites and bring them back to Earth for repair. We've outfitted it with the space lab built by our European partners and used it before the era of the space station to do scientific research. We used it as part of our partnership with the Russians, which is still continuing, first as part of the Mir space station, where we actually prolonged the useful life of Mir by several years through logistical supply visits with the shuttle. And now, of course, we're using it to build the new International Space Station, which is a huge international partnership. This is the first ocean deployment of 2 new high-precision instruments designed to monitor the Earth's signals from the seafloor. This housing contains the tilt meter and nano-bottom pressure recorder and the associated electronics and cabling used for power and communication. The instruments were deployed on the seafloor by a remotely operated vehicle as part of the Mars seafloor observatory test bed located at a depth of 3,000 feet in Monterey Bay. In this first test deployment in the ocean, it have already detected the ground motion from several large earthquakes as far from the Mars site as Chile and the Mariana Trench in the future. The instruments will be part of a global network of cabled seafloor observatories. Because of their precision, these 2 new instruments are already detecting signals, which could never be measured before.
So, let me talk about the polar regions, just to clarify exactly what we mean. And we have first of all the Arctic at the top of the Earth and the Antarctic at the bottom, and so the Arctic was named after the Greek word for bear. Now surprisingly it's not after the polar bears that live in the Antarctic or live in the Arctic, and based on it's after the Little and Great Bear constellations that can be seen in the sky. Now the Greek also hypothesized that there would be the Antarctic, which is how we get the name Antarctica, and of course it wasn't discovered until much later on. Now these regions are opposite in many ways other than just their names and their location on the globe. And so if we look at the Arctic first of all, and the Arctic is actually ocean surrounded by land. And so you can see here this is the UK down here and this kind of Russia and then American Canada around here. And so there is a bit of land cover in our ice on the top in the Arctic, which is Greenland here and Marky all this area here. Surprisingly, a lot of people don't realize that this isn't actually land. The North Pole isn't on land. It's just one big ocean.
But Aristotle says the reason we need rhetoric is we have to be able to use it. We have to be able to use rhetoric influence, basically, the rebel and the morons. We try to get them to understand truth. Truth is suggested, is different than rhetoric. Rhetoric is the dressing, is the body, right? Truth is the spirit, is the soul, is abstract. It doesn't have a body. It's not particular. If you want to get somebody to the truth, you might have to use some kind of tricks. Right, because most people are not sound and can't see the truth. That's what we think. Most people are ramble. Really? Only the educated, the erudite are actually capable of seeing the truth. If you want to get the general mass there, you may have to do fable a little bit. So Aristotle, that is rhetoric. Rhetoric is something that is used to influence people. Right? And it's a kind of mentally promised logic.